a brilliant intellectual.
As am I.
The two of us are sick and tired of dealing with troglodytes and have moved into a bomb shelter so we don't catch the stupid.
To stay sharp, we spend our days pursuing the pastime of true intellectuals, debunking YouTube videos.
We are the Debunkers.
When you can't make sense of the world today,
ask Mr. Jordan to show you the way.
On the Birds and the BS.
Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Birds and the BS, where we encourage you to actually take the advice you give your children.
I don't have any children. I'm an incel.
Today's letter comes from Allie in Alabama. Dear Mr. Jordan, my son is always playing with his gum and spitting it on the floor, so I've made a no gum in the house rule. My daughter says she always uses her gum responsibly, so it's still her right to chew. Should I let my daughter keep her gum?
No, you should punish her for what your son did.
Allie, let me use an analogy to help with this one.
I thought you already were using an analogy.
Imagine for a moment that I am surrounded by people who play with their gun.
Wait, he's doing this backwards.
With these people spitting bullets all over, would my mother still let me keep my gun?
Well, it's a good thing the government isn't your mommy, and an even better thing that even if it was, taking your gun away would not only fail to solve the problem, but would actually violate your rights.
Here to answer that question is my favorite mother from live musicals on TV, Anna Gasteyer.
Thank you for having me, Jordan. Sit up straight. You look like Shigeru Quasimodo.
You only see us from behind, and our lip syncing is still better than this.
If I were using my gun the right way, but others weren't, would you still let me keep mine?
Of course not.
This is so bizarre. Not only because he's confusing the elements of his analogy, as he should actually be sitting across from a visual representation of the government rather than a mother, given he is speaking about guns and not gum, but also because she appears to be a terrible mother.
Yes, why would you punish one of your children for the other child's behavior?
But I didn't do anything wrong.
It's a fair point you make. This was not your mistake. I'm a law-abiding son. Why take away my gun?
Oh my goodness, please stop singing.
But as a mother in charge of your fun, the acts of another can ruin it for everyone.
By the logic here, no one should be allowed to animate because they're doing a terrible job with the medium.
And that's because, as you always say...
This is why we can't have nice assault weapons or you-know-what, guns of any kind. When it comes to our kids, it's time for us to step in instead of think and pray for peace of mind.
Oh my, a quip about the thoughts and prayers cliche not solving the problem? Don't cut yourself on that edge.
Government says sacrifices sometimes should be made in the name of the greater good.
What?
Government says sacrifices sometimes should be made in the name of the greater good.
That's what totalitarian governments say.
How interesting she would say this, because the very idea of government getting to dictate to its citizens which rights are to be restricted in the name of your idea of a greater good is exactly the argument I would use in favor of gun ownership.
Someone tainted Tylenol, they fixed the flaw. There was one shoe bomb, and they changed the law. And when guns kill kids, that's the final...
Second Amendment.
I know he was being ironic, but thank you for that.
Ah, that's exactly what they always do. They shoot us down by invoking the Second Amendment.
Oh no, they referred to the Bill of Rights in order to remind you that the virtual non-probability of a child dying in a school shooting isn't enough to strip the entire country of their ability to protect themselves?
Don't they understand how much there is to lose?
Why, yes, we do. For example, according to the recently released data from the CDC, 2 million crimes are prevented by citizens using their guns each year, whereas only 300,000 crimes are committed using guns each year. Only about 10,000 people are killed in gun homicides per year, and only 10 of that 10,000 are children who are killed in school shootings over the past 25 years on average. So not only would restricting the right of people to keep and bear arms be a heinous overstep in state power, but it would actually result in more crime and violence than exists now. Do you understand what's at stake here?
There are lives at stake, and don't forget whose!
Gotta love the emotional manipulation here. Let's stand on the graves of dead children, exaggerate the probability of them dying in shootings, and shame all who call us out on this vicious tactic as not being empathetic enough.
Nothing's more important than the safety of a child.
Especially not the truth.
So time to take your guns and the rhetoric you stockpiled.
Whoa, that's pretty radical. Most of us are against assault weapons, but even we liberals can't go after the Second Amendment itself.
Why not?
Because it's the fundamental and foundational principle of a nation predicated on the notion that a government should be accountable to its people and not vice versa. Because every state system to ever devolve into tyranny has done so by first stripping their people of the right to keep and bear arms. Because guns are used to prevent crimes and save lives far more often than they're used to take them or commit crimes. Because there's literally no good reason to do so. But I could go on listing reasons why we shouldn't.
I mean, we just don't.
Yes, that too. Solid characterization of the opposition.
It's always, look, we're not saying we're coming for your guns.
Actually, now we are.
Oh, what a shocking revelation. The left wants to take our guns?
But gosh, they spent decades claiming they just wanted reasonable restrictions and weren't interested in taking all of our weapons away. And that any insinuation otherwise was paranoid bellowing from the far right.
Wow, it's almost as if they're dishonest. They've always been dishonest, and the fact that they were lying the entire time is a shock to no one.
Wait, really?
This is why we can't have compromise.
You want to take all of our guns, and you're telling us we need to compromise? That's not a compromise. That's just doing what you told us to do. A compromise means we get something in return. You're asking for blind obedience. Get your terms right.
I understand you think that hunting's neat.
The Second Amendment isn't about hunting. What we think is neat is defending ourselves from criminals, because that's what guns are used for the majority of the time, according to virtually all of the figures on this. Another thing which we think is neat is living in a country where our government doesn't imprison its citizens for telling jokes or reporting on ongoing court cases.
Yes, but I'm sorry to hear that conflicts with what you think is neat. Spreading non-truths and misrepresentations in order to strip the entire population of our country of their fundamental right to self-preservation, all the while sitting on your high horse and patting yourself on the back for your audacious and virtuous parroting of talking points handed down to you directly from the dominant media culture.
But sometimes our pastimes jeopardize our lives, which matter more than your precious skeet. I understand you really had a ball, then one lone wolf went and ruined it all.
Okay, so it would be redundant and unpleasant for us to continue to point out all the ways this is totally misrepresenting the argument made by those in favor of gun ownership, but what really concerns me is this idea that collective punishment is an ethical solution to any given problem.
Yes, if one is to be bothered by this video, not purely for its poor arguments and lack of understanding of the issue, they should be deeply upset by its implication that it's okay for the government to strip every citizen of any given right because a small minority has abused it.
And by one, I mean 96 deaths a day.
Oh, look, an actual statistic!
Except it really isn't. When she mentions that people abuse their guns, that very clearly implies that they use them to kill other people. But there are only 36 gun homicides per day. The 96 figure comes from including suicides and accidental deaths, which are obviously not what she's alluding to when she refers to guns being abused. So it's basically a flat-out lie.
Indeed! Now let's throw another statistic her way. Given that according to the CDC, 2 million crimes are prevented using guns each year, that means that guns are used to prevent violent crimes 5,479 times per day. Given that there are about 300,000 gun crimes per year, and that roughly 13,000 of those are gun homicides, that would suggest that about 4.3% of gun crimes are gun homicides. Therefore, we can infer that out of 2 million crimes prevented using guns each year, 86,666 of those crimes would have resulted in a death, and therefore 86,666 lives are saved, or 238 per day. So each day, roughly 38 people use a gun to kill another person, while 238 use a gun to save their life or someone else's.
Yes, quite good math.
Oh, but it doesn't end there. The stats which claim 2 million crimes are prevented using a firearm each year don't necessarily include instances of people preventing a crime simply by having brandished their weapon to scare off a potential perp, rather than actually using the weapon. So it's possible that the number is much, much higher than 2 million.
Ah, but we wouldn't want facts getting in the way, now would we?
So even though there are a lot of people who use guns responsibly,
The majority, yes.
the fun we get to have with them isn't worth the destruction they cause?
Ah, fun? Ah, yes, silly me. Saving 86,666 lives is a trivial, enjoyable pastime that we should dispense with to save far fewer people than that.
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of things we do that with.
Like lawn darts,
Uh-huh.
Sudafed, and adopted animals are harder to get than a gun because of the actions of a few.
And how many lives per year are saved by lawn darts?
Exactly.
But what about safety? And guns for protection?
Allow me to issue a logic correction. A gun beneath your pillow makes you feel secure. Till you think your granny's a burglar, then it loses its allure. They say a good guy with a gun could stop a bad guy with a gun.
But neither has to die if neither one has one.
Ah, an anecdote as well as a naive and childlike sentiment that the world would be nicer if nobody had guns.
Yes, first of all, notice that the good guy with a gun who shouldn't have one, in this instance, is a police officer. If guns are to be confiscated, how would they expect law enforcement to do so without guns of their own? Will criminals willingly give them up?
Ah, how could we have not seen the sheer brilliance of the poorly animated cartoon characters' "life would be nice if no guns" policy?
I only wonder how these men will find their sense of self-worth and masculinity without their pew-pew.
Oh, goodness, could a video be any more threadbare? The only men who feel insecure in their masculinity would want a gun line? Yawn.
Imagine, just for a moment, that people may own guns not simply because they're unsure of themselves as men, and that they won't be willing to give up their weapons simply because you've implied they aren't truly masculine for having them. Just think of the possibility that maybe, just maybe, in a life or death situation, one would rather have a gun than your approval.
Who you are as a man isn't found in your gun, and who we are as a country should be safe for everyone. Australians stayed butch after their overhaul.
Yes, and the amount of guns in their country increased as well.
So if you're a macho prick, you can stay one after all. Take us home!
This is why we can't have Rambo teachers.
This is why we can't have dummy leaders. This is why we can't have not nice things. And when the government needs to be overthrown, get your ass out and vote, cause we can't do this alone.
Ah, perfect. In the event of a tyrannical government, just vote harder.
Why didn't those in Soviet Russia or Nazi Germany think of that?
Yes, why didn't the founding fathers think to do that either?
Well, the founders revolted because they couldn't vote.
Oh my, you mean a government could refuse to acknowledge the right of its people to vote? Well, then what would they do?
Oh, if only there was some sort of weapon which could make citizens a very serious threat to their government as the last resort of salvaging a fallen republic.
That's all for today, folks. Allie, tell your daughter she can play with her bazooka gum all she wants, as long as she joins the March for Our Lives. And join us next time when we'll send our thoughts and prayers that Marco Rubio wakes up to find his balls between his legs instead of his gun. Till then,
This is why we can't have the Electoral College.
What?
No, seriously. What?
They just had to throw in another ho-hum leftist stock complaint, even at the expense of relevance?
I can't think of a final quip to sign off on. This was too intellectually tiresome. I've lost IQ points. I'm exhausted.
No punchline comes to mind?
No. I'm going to bed.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. As you may know, we're still trying to sort out our funding in the wake of the Patreon drama. But for now, if you'd like to see the cartoons continue to get made, please donate at paypal.me/FreedomToons. I'm hoping to select an alternative crowdfunding platform within a week or two, but until then, we really need your support. Thank you so much, and God bless.